This is the nature of things. The mountain gorillas of Central Africa, found in just 2 places on Earth, they are critically endangered. Even their admirers could expose them to disease. But a team of veterinarians, led by Canadian Mike Cranfield, is making house calls for gorillas, bringing them back from near extinction.
Who gets to save a species from extinction every day?
It's extreme conservation, and it seems to be working. But what's the price of success?
If we're vaccinating gorillas, the same way that we vaccinate human children for everything, are they still really wild?
Does the future of these gorillas depend on radical human intervention? Or is this going too far? It's a 21st century dilemma. Many animal species are making their last stand in the wild. But if we don't want them to go extinct, how much help should we give? The gorilla doctors show us what the future of saving species just might look like. In the Virunga Mountains of Rwanda, a young male gorilla is sick. His name is Muturengeri, and he's one of only 880 mountain gorillas in the world. Muturengeri has a cough, bad enough for a team of veterinarians to intervene. Jean-Felix Kenani is the head field vet for Rwanda.
Yesterday, they say Muturengeri was not eating, and for silverback, who are not eating for more than 1-2 days, is very serious. You heard it.
Oh, it's okay.
Muturengeri will receive a shot of antibiotics.
That is good.
But this gorilla is known to be aggressive. The vets need to choose their moment very carefully.
This position. Push.
Muturengeri knows what dart guns look like, so the vets need to conceal them at all times. Park rangers accompany the vets and make grunting sounds to reassure Muturengeri.
Un, deux, trois, puis tu vas sauter. C'est bien? 1, 2, 3.
Muturengeri's angry charge was not unexpected.
Buddy, are you okay?
Yes.
I'm okay. Working together. We got him on the leg, but as we...
Upon contact, the darts delivered the medicine.
Okay.
Yes.
Both that went down.
Trackers will return tomorrow and report back to the doctors on Muturengeri's condition. These veterinarians of the wild are known as the gorilla doctors. Their mission is to bring the mountain gorilla back from the brink of extinction, one gorilla at a time.
The gorilla charged, everybody ran away. Yes. But I would like to talk...
Back at headquarters, the vets report to Mike Cranfield, the director of gorilla doctors.
I went to vet school to be a dairy practitioner. And during the summer months, I became a zookeeper at the Riverview Park and Zoo in Peterborough.
So first we got to start with our anesthesia drugs, right?
So you can well imagine that I never, in my wildest dreams, thought I was going to be coming to Africa to be a veterinarian, let alone on the mountain gorillas.
The gorilla doctors practice extreme conservation.
So you're not going to get samples out of Rwanda?
You can just imagine the thrill, because what you're doing on a day-to-day basis
really affects their outcome as a wild population.
To you? So you would have to redo this every
It's an intense approach that includes not only medical interventions, but constant research on all the threats the gorillas face.
We need to leave that guy at 7 in the morning. Wait for Christine.
Trackers keep a daily watch on the wild gorillas,
At least to
I'm leaving Saturday.
and at least twice a week, the gorilla doctors do the jungle rounds themselves. The world's last mountain gorillas are confined to just 2 pockets in Rwanda, Uganda, and the Democratic Republic of Congo.
You all set? This is like a perfect storm here. You've got a wild population of animals that reproduce rather slowly, highly susceptible to human diseases in a very crowded area. I mean, it's just like a time bomb, and we're always concerned that we're going to pick it up quick enough and be able to respond to it.
As well as working in Rwanda, Mike regularly crosses the border to the Democratic Republic of Congo
Hi, Mike. How you doing? I'm fine.
for meetings and field visits to the gorillas. But political turmoil there can make that a very risky venture.
Yeah, the Congo's a little bit different because of the unrest. There's not as many tourists and stuff, so it seems a little bit more natural. But it can be dangerous.
Straight from the border, Mike heads up the mountain to Virunga National Park. Inside the park, Mike and Congo vet Eddie Kambale are led by trackers who know where each gorilla group can be found.
The trackers go up really early in the morning, and they have tracked them the night before, and they know where the gorillas went to sleep. They build these night nests, and they go up really early in the morning. They get to the night nests, and usually the gorillas have left, but they follow the fresh trails.
It's a 4-hour slog. Some of the gorillas live nearly 3 kilometers up the mountain, and the weather goes from sun to rain in minutes. Finally, Mike and Eddie approach the group slated for their checkup.
I can hear them.
It's a typical size, 16 gorillas in total, led by the dominant silverback. Mature males all have a silver patch on their back, but the dominant silverback is the only one who gets to mate with the females. So relations between adult males can be tense. There's always a younger one waiting to take over.
So Eddie, the silverback that broke down that trail, was he the major silverback?
No, that's on the second one.
It's a very nice situation to view. I mean, it's just, they get up in the morning, they chow down for a while, they walk a bit, lie down, sleep for a while, get up, eat a bit more, walk a bit more, and build their night nest. So it's just an incredible lifestyle they have.
Grooming is another big part of the day. It's done to remove ticks, but it also serves to strengthen the bonds between individuals.
You look in their eye and just like kind of wonder who's watching who, and it's just there's somebody home there. And so it's taken a while, but I've really fallen in love with gorillas. So that's Big Bend just ahead of us, right? Yeah.
On their rounds, the doctors spend a lot of time watching gorillas eat. In a typical day, a gorilla will eat more than 20 kilograms of plants and stay within a pretty small area. That makes it easier for the doctors to find and care for them.
Please leg off down.
Mike and Eddie come across a juvenile whose mother died a few months ago. The vets were worried if he would survive. But there he is, right beside the dominant silverback.
It's really important for us to find out its age because it's doing really, really well without its mother, although the silverback's, protecting it, obviously. And that would help us make decisions when a female dies and has a baby in the forest, whether we can leave it or whether we should bring it out as an orphan. Looks like a good father.
Yep.
Every gorilla here is monitored daily for any sign of sickness or injury.
So you just,
Baby and banana baby.
these are not seen if you don't circle them, right?
Yeah.
Respiratory rates, feeding and activity levels, there's a check box for every one. It's an intense approach to conservation pioneered by gorilla doctors.
Normally, with wildlife, you don't treat individuals in their habitat. In fact, this was probably the first project to ever do that back in 1986.
Back then, there were only 250 mountain gorillas in the world. Today, there are nearly 900. It's an improvement, but the species remains at high risk of extinction. That's largely because mountain gorillas live near some of the most densely populated areas in all of Africa. And human disease is the #1 threat to the gorilla's health. So gorilla doctors also act as disease detectives, trying to root out possible infections before they occur. Laurie Harris, a vet student from the University of California, is collecting medical samples from park staff and villagers.
So we'll look at any virus we find from each of the human groups and each of the primate groups and compare those all together to see how similar they are to each other.
Gorillas share 98% of their DNA with humans, which means they can share our diseases too. And with no immunity, they could die from even a human cold.
Respiratory disease is the second leading cause of death in mountain gorillas. We think that one reason that the outbreaks have been so severe is because the gorillas are what we call naive to these viruses. They haven't been exposed, just like a person who hasn't been vaccinated against a disease and is exposed to it can become very ill.
And if a truly virulent disease, like Ebola, hit the population, Mike Cranfield worries it could spell the end of the mountain gorilla.
Thousands of gorillas and chimpanzees are being lost western lowlands due to Ebola. And I'm sure it would have the same devastating effect on the mountain gorillas. Then I would go in and vaccinate these animals before they get hit by a disease. From a medical perspective, it makes total sense to vaccinate them.
But the medical perspective is not shared by everyone. Martha Robbins is a primatologist and a world expert on the mountain gorilla.
If Ebola came through here, the whole population could be wiped out. We could be left with 20 gorillas. But does that mean that we start vaccinating? You know, where do you stop? And if we're vaccinating gorillas, you know, the same way that we vaccinate human children for everything, are they still really wild?
These are supposed to be wild gorillas, and we're supposed to leave them in a natural situation. But when you have tens of thousands of people visiting them in a year, and you've got them into a very small, tight park with very sharp borders, and then the highest population density of all Africa right around them, that's not too natural a situation.
What exactly is wild and natural? It's a question that goes to the heart of the gorilla doctor's work.
So there's no sign of trauma or anything?
And the question needs an urgent answer when reports come in that a gorilla has been injured in a fight.
Coolpox. Yeah, coolpox is here.
Back at Gorilla Doctor's headquarters, Jean-Felix and Noel are preparing for another intervention. A dominant silverback has been injured in a fight.
Case. They call us for a case of gorillas not behaving normally, not eating, just not moving. And for us, it's a big, serious problem.
The injured silverback also happens to be the leader of Muturengeri's group. The young adult male darted with antibiotics. The vets hike 3 hours to the group. They find a few females, and they find Muturengeri always on guard. But the group's leader is not with them. If he is wounded, he may have become separated from the group. But if this gorilla was injured in a fight with another gorilla, should the doctors intervene?
Some veterinarians, if this was happening in a zoo, they would treat every individual that got an injury. But if we're looking at it from a population perspective, where animals have normal life courses, and some of them naturally, if humans weren't sticking their noses in the business, would die from these injuries.
For their part, gorilla doctors say they take in many points of view before acting.
When we make a decision to intervene, it's a wide input from a variety of different people. MDs, agricultural veterinarians, we've got ecologists, we've got epidemiologists, and we try to hear everybody's ideas because we're veterinarians, we're really proactive, and we believe in preventative medicine.
Back in the forest, one of the trackers makes a discovery. The vets race to the scene. But it's too late. During the fight, this silverback had his neck bitten, and then an infection took its toll.
He have like a small infection there, and also it became all on the body, It's like doing like a septicemia,
The gorilla will be carefully carried out of the park to the lab for a full autopsy. The other members of the group look on with interest, especially Muturengeri.
I think when a great ape dies, they are so highly evolved that they have a mourning period. So you have to weigh sort of their emotional well-being with the idea of finding out why the animal died and possibly helping others in their group or their population.
The rangers indicate that Muturengeri is circling around. It seems that he is not ready to say goodbye just yet. Now, as the only male in the group, Muturengeri will try to become its leader. But at only 13 years of age, he may not be accepted by the females. And other nearby males may attack. The next few weeks will be critical. Over in Congo, Mike and Eddie are finishing their group checkups.
You got any recorded?
Yeah, I get some.
So you just...
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. The new baby is here. The new baby is here. Wow.
You need to get this.
They come across a brand new baby, just days old. It's a happy sight, especially since this baby was born in a war zone. War has racked eastern Congo for a decade. Millions of people have been killed or displaced. For months, the war reached right into the guerrillas' forest home. Rebels used it as their base, so when the vets went to do their rounds, they found themselves held at gunpoint.
Suddenly, we realized that we are in a rebels camp. So they arrested us saying, "Whoa, guys, what have we come to do here?"
what are you carrying? So they said, okay, drop your stuff down, okay, hands up, and then they started checking us, checking cameras, what kind of picture we have in the camera. They said, okay, go, and never come back again.
A week before filming, the rebels finally surrendered. And while the guerrillas all fared well, the same cannot be said of the Virunga Park Rangers. There's perhaps no more dangerous conservation job in the world. In the past decade alone, over 140 rangers have been killed protecting the gorillas and their park. Without these rangers, there's no way gorilla doctors could do their work. That's a fact Chief Warden Emmanuel de Merode, who oversees the whole of Virunga Park, knows well.
Mountain gorillas have actually increased in numbers since the war started in 1994. And that's very much the result of a small team of Congolese rangers who have never given up. They've stayed here even when their own government forces have been driven out. They've consistently stayed behind and continued to protect the park, often at an incredible cost.
Innocent Mburanumwe is one ranger who has seen his share of death, gorilla and human. His own brother, also a ranger, was killed by rebels, but he has never thought of quitting.
I will do it forever because I love the nature. I love animals. And we have been fighting with this armed group. You know that they live inside the forest. Once you meet with them, you have to exchange fire. It's a dangerous job.
Innocent is the warden in charge of the park's gorilla sector. It's a huge expanse of jungle where poachers, rebels, and criminal gangs all operate. Just how ruthless they can be was made clear in 2007.
We got a call saying that there is a massacre here in Virunga.
The guerrilla doctors packed their gear and hiked through the night to find a devastating scene. What they discovered were 6 murdered gorillas.
All the bodies were just left. In some of the bodies, some of the females were left with live babies sitting on them.
The gorillas had been killed by a mafia operating in the park as a way of getting back at the Virunga Rangers.
It was pretty bleak days, very bleak days.
But despite the tragedy, not everything was lost. Against all odds, 2 infants found beside their dead mothers were rescued. 6 years later, those orphans are thriving, thanks to the man who rescued them, Andre Bauma.
One little baby was 2.5 kilos. We took her, and she was very weak, starving, tired, and we had to put them both in a situation that would allow them to live. We never dreamed that they would stay alive, but we were able to keep them alive.
These orphans, Ndezi and Ndekazi, are the first mountain gorillas to ever survive in captivity. And that's because Andre set out to replicate the tight bond between mother and infant in the wild. Close contact, 24/7, for over 3 years.
So Ndakasi knows that we are her mother, her siblings, her family. Because we fed her, gave her a bottle. We slept together on the same bed. When she started walking, we played together. doing everything gorillas do with their families in the forest. That's what we had to do with Ndese and Ndakasi.
Les gorilles font dans leur propre famille à l'intérieur de la brousse.
Ndakazi and Ndezi are now 6, and Maisha, a third female, is 10. And there's a new orphan about to join their ranks. His name is Matabishi. Before he's introduced to the others, the doctors need to ensure he isn't carrying any disease.
Tuberculosis is fairly widespread in the humans around this area, and we think that this particular orphan stayed with some poachers for a little bit of time, so we're a little bit concerned about that.
After the exam, the young orphan awakes and returns to his mother, Andre. Because of its close contact with humans, this little gorilla will likely never be reintroduced to the wild. The risk of it carrying a human disease into the forest is just too great. A disease like herpes, for example, which the doctors discovered these orphans already have.
They had an outbreak of a herpes virus, and we sequenced the herpes virus, and it's a human herpes virus. And now we have a PhD student trying to find out whether there's herpes virus in the wild population, because there is, then it wouldn't be a problem. But if there isn't, how can we justify putting 4 individuals into a population introducing a disease, at least one disease that we know of?
So the hope is that the 4 orphans will form their own group. But that all depends on Matabishi being accepted. Maisha, the oldest orphan, is the one who will meet him first. The introduction is done in a cage because if Maisha attacks Matabishi, the vets can separate them quickly. But it turns out there's no need. Soon, the two are inseparable. Maisha has an infant to care for, and Matabishi has a new mother, a gorilla one this time. Returning to Rwanda, Mike gets up to speed on Muturengere, the young silverback trying to establish himself as group leader.
Lots of babies in that group, right? So what are the chances of him being able to manage that group?
Yeah, I think it's quite strong enough to hold the group because, you know, he's very strong and he's been fighting for Getty before.
Mike is worried about a silverback from another group taking over.
If another silverback comes in, all babies will be killed because that man will want the females to come back to cycle so he can produce his. So
this is a pretty major deal.
So that will be very tough in terms of conservation because we lose main babies.
With so much at stake, Noel and Jean-Felix go up to check on Muturengere later that day.
Muturengere is a gorilla that we really like, but we're also a little afraid of him, and the trackers too, especially the younger ones. They're always worried about knowing where he is. He likes to play a lot, but he has to take on his new responsibility. To become the leader, he has to change his behavior.
It seems the other gorillas are not yet convinced Muturengere can lead and keep the group together. They often move away when he comes near.
It's rare for a male to acquire a dominant position until they're 16 or older. So I would say there's a very good chance that he's going to be challenged. Male-male competition is extremely strong in gorillas. So males, as they mature, they become more powerful, they become much stronger, and then there'll be a period where they're really in their prime.
Only 13 years old, Muturengere is not in his prime. But he's no ordinary gorilla either.
When Muturengere was 3 years old, he disappeared. That had never happened before. That a 3-year-old takes off and leaves not only his mother, but the whole group. The trackers couldn't find him, so we all assumed he was dead. We even took his name off the group list. But 3 months later, he came back.
Clearly a maverick, maybe he can succeed against the odds. But being so young, and with older males roaming nearby, the odds are stacked against him.
Now slowly.
And if there weren't enough risks already, even admirers pose a threat to the mountain gorilla. It's a beautiful morning at Volcanoes National Park in Ruhengeri, Rwanda. The park is full of tourists fulfilling their dreams. For $800 each, they'll get to spend 1 hour with mountain gorillas. Gorilla trekking accounts for 90% of Rwanda's tourism revenue. That money has gone a long way in saving the mountain gorilla. But there is a catch.
Tourism is a double-edged sword, right? On one hand, we have this tremendous income. On the other hand, we're increasing the risk of the biggest threat, which is disease transmission from humans.
It's not hard to imagine that someday an unknowing tourist will bring a disease along with them. But today, all these people want to do is enjoy the experience of a lifetime.
You know, the gorillas have different communication. Normally have 16 communication.
The group is given a rundown about what to expect when encountering wild gorillas.
She's no problem. She's happy.
And the rangers demonstrate some of the behaviors the tourists might see.
Do that.
And they also learn what to do if a gorilla charges.
She's do that and not run away, you see.
And with a simple step over this stone wall, the world of the mountain gorilla awaits.
Okay, go there, film the gorilla.
This is the Hirwa group. For years, they've been watching humans from all over the world come their way. All part of a day's activities now.
It really is quite a special thing. I mean, these are very big, very powerful animals, and they're letting us into their lives. I mean, can you imagine having 8 strangers sit down in your living room with cameras for 1 hour every day?
Even if the visit is only an hour, nearly 30,000 people meet the gorillas each year. To limit disease transmission, tourists are told they must stay at least 7 meters away from the gorillas. But in practice, that's not always possible.
Everybody knows you're supposed to stay 7 meters away from the gorillas, but I can tell you, time after time after time, I go up and give talks to tourists, and they say, "Oh, you should have seen it because the silverback came up and touched me," or "This baby came and I pushed it away." And so we would like to add a different rule. In fact, it's in the best practices of great ape tourism, and that's to put on a face mask.
A simple procedure, not yet implemented in Rwanda, but one that would help keep the gorillas safe. None of the interaction between tourist and gorilla would be possible, though, if the gorillas were not habituated to the presence of humans. Wild gorillas are naturally afraid of humans. But through a process of gradual exposure, they become accustomed to having us around. And thanks to this, people like Martha can study and learn about them.
They have extremely long lifespans. And to answer a lot of questions we have about gorillas, even very basic questions, takes decades. So there are benefits to having habituated gorillas, but there are also risks. We're exposing them more to disease. They're more vulnerable to poachers. If a group of poachers comes in, they're going to be less likely to run away.
In the bamboo forest, Mike and Martha come to see a female gorilla who lost her hand in a snare set by poachers.
So this is the mother with the 3-month-old baby?
Yeah, it's pretty neat that she can handle it without her left hand.
Yeah, but I think they're quite dexterous, and they have to learn to adapt even after things like that. I mean, maybe the injury happened when she was a kid. The baby's fallen asleep.
Currently, 95% of the gorillas in Rwanda are habituated. The other 5% live deep in the forest and flee from humans. As a veterinarian worried about treating gorillas, Mike Cranfield would like to see every last wild mountain gorilla accustomed to humans.
If you have a disease enter into the habituated groups, it could be passed the unhabituated groups, then we wouldn't be able to monitor them or treat them. So I think actually it's a little bit dangerous.
But who gets to decide what's best for the gorillas?
It's hard to really do a risk-benefit equation for another species because they have absolutely no say in this.
As founder of the Canadian Ape Alliance, Kerry Bowman has worked on conservation in Congo for decades. Yet he does question just how far we are going to save the mountain gorilla.
When I look to see the amount of intervention that mountain gorillas receive, it does make me uncomfortable when I look at the amount of human suffering that is going on within this area. It is a very sobering thought, and it raises some deep ethical questions. And I don't have any easy answers for that, and I could be wrong about this, but I truly believe, having been in this country many times, that if you ask the average Congolese person if in fact they thought that the survival of the gorillas was a good thing, I believe they definitely would say that it is.
So while it seems backs saving the great apes, not everyone backs habituating every last mountain gorilla.
I think something deep will be lost, and I think to say this is excellent conservation in and of itself is questionable.
Nobody wants to let go of the feeling that there's still a wild population. And so there are people that wish we'd be less aggressive, and there's people that wish we'd be more aggressive. So we walk this fine line.
But when reports come in of a baby gorilla caught in a snare, there's no debate about what to do. In Volcanoes National Park, it's intervention time once again. A baby gorilla has been caught in a snare, and the gorilla doctors need to act quickly. The infant is free from the snare, but still has the rope around its wrist. A tight rope can cut off circulation and cause serious damage. The vets discuss the plan. They'll need to sedate the mother. She won't let them near her infant otherwise. And this group has 3 silverbacks who will all attack if they feel the baby is threatened.
2 silverback down there, in front of that female. We'll be darting this female, but we have another silverback there, up. And probably if she screams, that silverback will come down.
You only get one shot at darting a gorilla, so Jean-Felix has to make sure he can't miss.
To have a good shot, I need to dart on the left side, of the mom. And what you should do first is just to grab the baby and put the baby on the back and run, trying to reach the silverback.
The trackers move into position, standing between the vets and the silverbacks. Jean-Felix shoots. The dart delivers the sedative. The vets wait for her to go to sleep and then approach the baby. And then the baby starts to scream. And the silverbacks attack. The trackers beat the bushes with sticks, warding off the angry males. Jean-Felix and the team get to work. The rope is on tight. If not removed, it could even lead to the loss of the hand. The baby's arm will be fine. But suddenly the mother is having trouble breathing. All the while, the silverbacks have not backed down. Jean-Felix checks her heartbeat. The mother will be all right.
All interventions are stressful, for everybody. Even the vet, even the porters and the trackers. But we need to control the situation, But the mom is feeling the baby, and the baby with the mom is okay. And the group is close. We need just to wait where she'll be recovering, and she will join the group.
The whole operation has taken less than 1 hour. The vets have done their job, and all's well with this gorilla group. But can the same thing be said for Muturengere and his group? Jean-Felix and Noel head out early morning and are surprised at what they see. They find Muturengere feeding with the whole group. The females are all around. One even nurses her infant. And with that charge putting him before his group, it's clear to the vets that Muturengere has succeeded in becoming its leader.
Muturengere, c'est un gorille spécial.
Muturengere is a special gorilla. He's the silverback among all the females, and now they all accept his leadership. He's earned their respect. Even the oldest female, who was most resistant to him, accepts him as the leader now.
Accepte son pouvoir.
But who knows? Would Muturengere even be here if the gorilla doctors hadn't intervened? Well, their methods raise questions about how wild the gorillas should be. The vets will just keep working to save them, one gorilla at a time. Venture with Dr. Jennifer Gardy into a possible world of the future.
We're doing 120 clicks, and get this car is driving itself.
Take a look at some recent scientific innovations, both new technology
3D scanning and 3D printing replacement body parts on demand.
and fresh ideas about how we interact with the natural world.
Basically, 3,000-4,000 years, we should have a monster of a tree.
Is the future already here?
Come on. Royals and animals.
Prince Philip loved to say, what you're eating on your plate, I shot.
On Doc Zone, next on CBC.
Marketplace is back. Are you foot stomping mad?
we're on the hunt for Canada's dumbest charge.
Sneaky fees.
Hidden fees.
Frivolous charges.
What's your dumbest charge?
Watch, then vote. Marketplace, Friday at 8 on CBC.
Are you with me?
Janet King, Sunday at 9 on CBC.